After I became a millionaire, I realized who was secretly protecting me. My name is Catherine Reed. I'm the founder and CEO of Reed & Associates, a wealth management firm in Boston that handles portfolios worth over $2 billion. I built it from nothing. Just me, a laptop, and a one-bedroom apartment in Beacon Hill 15 years ago. Now I have offices on Newberry Street with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the public garden, where the swan boats glide through water so still it looks like glass. But that December morning, standing in my corner office with my hand pressed against the cold window, watching snowflakes dissolve against the glass, I wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or client acquisitions. I was thinking about the envelope. It had arrived 3 days earlier. Cream-colored paper, expensive weight, my name written in handwriting I almost recognized but couldn't place. No return address. Inside, a single sentence on a card. The Patterson deal. Check the third-party audit from 2019. Trust me. I'd thrown it away immediately. Anonymous advice is either a trap or desperation, and I'd learned long ago not to entertain either. But something about those two words, trust me, had lodged beneath my ribs like a splinter I couldn't reach. The Patterson deal was my white whale, a private equity merger worth $43 million, the kind of deal that would elevate my firm into a different stratosphere entirely. I'd been pursuing Marcus Patterson for 2 years, attending the same charity galas, the same symphony fundraisers, always positioned just close enough to seem coincidental. He was old Boston money, the kind that doesn't trust easily and never forgets a misstep. And someone, somehow, knew exactly what I was chasing. I pulled the card from my wastebasket that morning. I'd retrieved it the night before, unable to sleep, and read it again under the pale winter light. The handwriting had a strange elegance to it, slightly slanted, each letter carefully formed. Feminine, maybe, or just meticulous. My assistant, Jennifer, knocked twice before entering. "Your 9 o'clock is here." And Marcus Patterson's office called. They want to move Thursday's lunch to his club instead of the restaurant. "Which club?" I asked, still staring at the card. "The Somerset. He's a legacy member." Of course he was. Everything with Marcus was about lineage, about proving you belonged to a world that had existed long before you were born. I'd spent months learning the right references, the right tone, the right way to hold a wine glass at his preferred restaurants. My own father had been a postal worker in Dorchester. I didn't belong to Marcus Patterson's world, but I'd learned how to stand in it without flinching. "Confirm it," I said. "And Jennifer, do we still have access to archived third-party audits from external deals we've consulted on?" She paused. "We should. Why?" "Just curious about our record-keeping protocols." After she left, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, typing in search parameters I'd used 100 times before. The Patterson family holdings were sprawling. Real estate, maritime investments, a textile company his great-grandfather had founded in 1887. I'd researched every branch, every subsidiary, every board member. But I'd never looked at a third-party audit from 2019. It took me 40 minutes to find it, buried in a subfolder of consulting reports my firm had been peripherally involved in. An independent assessment of Patterson Maritime's fleet insurance policies. Dry, technical, the kind of document that makes your eyes glaze over by page 3. Except on page 17, there was a footnote, a discrepancy. Small enough to overlook, significant enough to matter. One of Patterson Maritime's vessels, a container ship registered in Liberia, had been listed under 2 different insurance policies simultaneously for a 4-month period. An overlap that suggested either incompetence or something deliberately hidden. My coffee had gone cold in my hand. Someone had known. Someone had known I'd been chasing this deal, known I'd need leverage, known exactly where to point me. And they'd done it anonymously, with a handwritten note and 2 words that felt more like a plea than advice. "Trust me." I'd built my entire career on trusting no one but myself, on reading contracts 3 times, on verifying every reference, on never accepting help I hadn't explicitly negotiated for. The world I operated in didn't reward trust. It rewarded vigilance. But someone had been watching. Someone had seen what I needed before I even knew I needed it. And I had absolutely no idea who. The snow had turned to sleet by Thursday afternoon, coating Beacon Street in a thin glaze of ice that made the city look like it had been dipped in glass. I took a car to the Somerset Club, watching Boston slide past the window, the brick townhouses of Louisburg Square, the gas lamps that still burned on Mount Vernon Street, the kind of old-world elegance that whispered money so old it didn't need to announce itself. Marcus Patterson was waiting in the library, a room all dark wood and leather, where portraits of men in Victorian collars stared down with expressions of permanent disapproval. He stood when I entered, extending a hand that was dry and cool. "Catherine, thank you for accommodating the change." "Of course," I said, settling into the chair across from him. "I appreciate you making the time." We ordered. He had the sole, I had the salmon, and spent the first 20 minutes discussing market volatility, interest rate predictions, the safe choreography of business lunch conversation. But I could feel the insurance discrepancy sitting in my attaché case like a loaded gun, and I knew I had to decide whether to use it. The anonymous note had given me leverage, but leverage obtained through unknown means was dangerous. If I confronted Marcus with information I shouldn't have had, he'd want to know where it came from, and I had no answer. "I've been impressed with your firm's growth," Marcus said, cutting into his fish with surgical precision. "Building something from nothing, that requires a particular kind of determination. My father used to say that nothing worth having comes without a fight." "Wise man, your father." I smiled, not correcting him. My father had actually said that nothing comes without working yourself to exhaustion, but Marcus didn't need the unpolished version. "I'd like to discuss your maritime holdings," I said carefully. "Specifically, your insurance structuring." Something flickered across his face. Not quite alarm, but attention sharpening. That's fairly granular for an initial conversation. "I believe in understanding the complete picture before making recommendations." He set down his fork. "What specifically concerns you?" This was the moment. I could mention the discrepancy, prove I'd done research he hadn't expected, show him I was thorough enough to trust with his legacy. Or I could retreat, wait for more conventional leverage. But before I could speak, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Once, then twice. I never received calls during client meetings. Jennifer knew better. "Excuse me," I said, glancing at the screen. "Unknown number." A text message. "Don't mention the insurance yet. He's not ready to trust you." "Wait." My hand went cold. I looked up at Marcus, who was watching me with patient curiosity. Around us, the club continued its quiet rhythm, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversations between men who'd known each other since prep school, the smell of old books and older money. Someone was watching me, right now, in this moment. "Everything all right?" Marcus asked. "Yes," I said, sliding my phone back into my pocket with fingers that felt numb. "Just my assistant confirming tomorrow's schedule." I pivoted the conversation to broader wealth preservation strategies, watching Marcus relax incrementally as we moved away from specifics. But my mind was racing, cataloging everyone in the room, every face I could see through the doorway, every waiter who passed our table. The note had been one thing. Calculated, planned, something sent from a distance. But this was immediate. Active. Someone tracking my movements, my meetings, my decisions in real time. "Catherine?" I realized Marcus had asked me something. "I'm sorry?" "I asked if you'd reviewed the Henderson portfolio I sent over. Similar structure to what we're discussing." "Yes," I said, forcing focus. The trust architecture was particularly elegant. We finished lunch with handshakes and vague promises to continue the conversation. As I stepped out into the sleet, pulling my coat tighter against the wind, I scanned Commonwealth Avenue for anyone watching, any face that lingered too long. Nothing. Just Boston in December, gray and cold and indifferent. I called Jennifer from the car. The text that just came through to my cell, did you send it? No, I haven't texted you since this morning. Are you sure? A pause. Catherine, what's going on? Nothing, just checking. I hung up and stared at the message again. Don't mention the insurance yet. He's not ready to trust you. Wait, whoever this was, they knew my strategy. They knew what I'd found in the audit. They knew where I was having lunch and exactly what I'd been about to say. They knew me. And the strange thing, the thing that made my chest tighten with something I couldn't quite name, was that they'd been right. I'd seen Marcus's body language shift when I mentioned the maritime holdings. He hadn't been ready. If I'd pushed, I would have lost him. Someone was protecting me from my own impatience. But why? And how long had they been watching? I didn't sleep that night. My penthouse in the Millennium Tower had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, and I stood there for hours, watching the city lights reflect off the black water, trying to convince myself there was a rational explanation. A business rival tracking my movements. A concerned colleague who preferred anonymity. Even corporate espionage made more sense than what I kept circling back to. Someone who genuinely wanted to help me, asking nothing in return. In my world, nothing came without a price. I'd learned that at 23, when I'd taken my first job at a wealth management firm, and realized that every mentor who offered guidance expected something back. Loyalty, credit, silence about their methods. I'd learned it again at 28, when the partner who'd promised to support my promotion had withdrawn his recommendation the moment I refused to sleep with him. And I'd learned it most painfully at 31, when my former fiancé had proposed with my grandmother's ring and a business plan that required my capital and his vision. I'd built Reed & Associates on one principle: never need anyone more than they need you. But someone had been helping me, and I couldn't find the angle. The next morning, I arrived at the office before sunrise and pulled every piece of correspondence I'd received in the past 6 months. Emails, letters, cards from clients and vendors. I was looking for handwriting, for any match to the elegant script on that first note. Nothing. "You're here early," Jennifer said, appearing in my doorway with coffee at 7:30. "And you look like you didn't sleep." "I'm fine." "You've said that 3 times this week, which means you're not." She set the coffee on my desk with the firmness of someone who'd worked for me long enough to stop pretending I was always right. "What's actually going on?" I almost told her. Jennifer had been with me for 6 years, had seen me through bad deals and worse relationships, had never once betrayed a confidence. But this felt different. Admitting I was being helped by a stranger felt like admitting weakness, like confessing I'd needed intervention to succeed. "Just the Patterson deal," I said. "High stakes." She didn't believe me, but she let it go. That afternoon, another envelope arrived. Same cream paper, same handwriting. Jennifer brought it to me with raised eyebrows, and I waited until she left to open it. Inside, "Your instinct about the Henderson comparison was perfect. Marcus respects historical precedent. Reference the 1994 Trust and Estate Journal article on maritime asset protection. He contributed to it anonymously. It will show you've done real research." My hands were shaking. This wasn't just business intelligence. This was intimate knowledge of Marcus Patterson's professional history, the kind of detail that wouldn't exist in any database or public record. Someone had either worked closely with him or had access to information that shouldn't exist. I found the article in an archived journal that afternoon. Dense, technical, arguing for specific trust structures in maritime commerce. No author listed, but the writing style matched everything I knew about Marcus. Precise, traditional, slightly condescending toward modern approaches. If I referenced it in our next meeting, he'd know I'd done research beyond the surface. He'd see me as someone who respected his work, his legacy. But I'd also be using information I shouldn't have. And every time I did, I'd be trusting this anonymous protector more, becoming more dependent on their guidance. The thought made me feel like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't see the bottom of. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice warm with surprise. "Catherine, is everything all right?" "I'm fine, Mom. Just wanted to hear your voice." A pause. My mother knew me too well. "What's wrong?" I stood at my window again, watching the harbor. "Do you remember when I was applying to business school, and someone anonymously paid half my tuition?" "Of course. We never did find out who." "Did you ever wonder if it was someone we knew? Someone who'd been watching out for me?" "I assumed it was a scholarship fund that didn't publicize recipients." "Why are you thinking about this now?" "Because it was happening again. Because someone had been there then, and someone was here now, and I'd spent my entire adult life believing I'd succeeded alone." "No reason," I said, just reminiscing. After we hung up, I pulled out my old business school files from storage, documents I hadn't looked at in over a decade. Found the tuition payment records. The anonymous contribution had come through a trust, the Whitmore Education Foundation. I'd never heard of it before, or since. I spent 2 hours searching that night. No website, no public filings, no record of the Whitmore Education Foundation existing anywhere except that single tuition payment. Someone had created an entire legal entity just to help me pay for school without me knowing who they were. And now they were doing it again. I sat in my empty penthouse, surrounded by evidence of the success I'd built. The custom furniture, the original art on the walls, the view that cost more per month than my father had made in a year, and felt something crack open inside my chest. What if I hadn't built this alone? What if someone had been protecting me all along, smoothing the path in ways I'd never noticed, never acknowledged, never thanked them for? The thought was terrifying, because if it was true, then everything I believed about myself, my independence, my self-sufficiency, my refusal to need anyone, was built on a foundation I didn't understand, and I had no idea who I'd been refusing to see. The meeting with Marcus Patterson was scheduled for the following Tuesday at his office in the financial district, a corner suite in one of those buildings that had been renovated so many times it had lost any sense of era, caught between marble lobbies and modern glass. I'd prepared obsessively, memorized the journal article, crafted the perfect moment to reference it, rehearsed the casual tone that would make it seem like I'd simply stumbled across it in my research. Everything choreographed, nothing left to chance. But when I arrived at 2 p.m., Marcus's assistant looked flustered. "Ms. Reed, I'm so sorry. Mr. Patterson had to step out unexpectedly. A family matter. He asked if you could reschedule for later this week." I kept my expression neutral, even as frustration coiled in my stomach. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "I'm sure it's fine. I'll have his secretary call you." I was halfway across the lobby when my phone rang. Unknown number again. I answered without thinking. "Who is this?" Silence. Then a woman's voice, older, careful. "Catherine, don't be angry." My heart stopped. "Who is this?" "There's a coffee shop on Milk Street. 3 blocks from where you're standing. I'll be at the back table in 20 minutes. Please come." "Why would I?" "Because you want to know who's been helping you, and because I owe you an explanation." The line went dead. I stood in the middle of Post Office Square, tourists flowing around me, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. This was it. The moment where the mystery either resolved or deepened into something I couldn't control. Every instinct I'd honed over 15 years of business told me to walk away. Unknown meetings were how people got compromised, manipulated, destroyed. But another part of me, the part that had been lying awake for weeks, cataloging every anonymous intervention, needed to know. I walked to Milk Street. The coffee shop was small, brick-walled, the kind of place that catered to financial district workers grabbing espresso between meetings. I scanned the back tables and saw her immediately. A woman in her late 60s, elegant in the way that suggested money but not ostentation. Steel gray hair pulled back in a low bun, pearls at her throat, a navy coat folded carefully over the chair beside her. She was watching the door, and when our eyes met, something in her expression cracked, relief mixed with fear. I walked to her table slowly, every nerve alert. "Catherine," she said softly, "thank you for coming. You have 2 minutes to tell me who you are before I leave." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Please, sit." I remained standing. "Start talking." She took a breath, and I saw her hands were shaking slightly around her coffee cup. "My name is Margaret Whitmore. I've been watching over you for a very long time." The name hit me like cold water. Whitmore, the Education Foundation. Yes. Why? Because I owe you a debt I can never repay. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were bright with something that looked like tears. Because of what your father did for me, 34 years ago. I sat down then, unable to remain standing. My father? My father was a postal worker in Dorchester. He didn't know anyone like you. He knew my daughter. Margaret's hands tightened on her cup. Her name was Emily. She was 17, struggling with addiction, living on the streets. Your father found her one night in February, unconscious in an alley off Bodouin Street. He could have walked past. Most people did. But he called an ambulance, stayed with her, made sure she got to the hospital safely. I felt something cold spreading through my chest. I don't understand. Emily died 3 weeks later. Overdose. But those 3 weeks, because of your father, I got to say goodbye. I got to tell her I loved her. I got to hold her hand in the hospital and try to give her every piece of my heart I'd failed to give her when she was alive. A tear slipped down Margaret's cheek. Your father gave me that gift. He gave me closure when I should have had nothing but regret. The coffee shop sounds had faded to white noise. He never mentioned it. He wouldn't have. When I found him a year later, it took me that long to track him down through the hospital records. He refused any kind of repayment. Said he'd just done what anyone should do. But I needed to repay him somehow, and he wouldn't let me. So you helped me instead. I watched you, saw you apply to business school, saw how brilliant you were, how determined. Your father had died by then. The heart attack was so sudden, and I couldn't help him anymore. But I could help his daughter. So I created the foundation, paid half your tuition, and made sure you never knew. My throat was tight. And you've been doing it ever since. Watching, yes. Helping when I could, but carefully. You're so independent, Catherine. So determined to succeed on your own terms. I knew if you ever discovered I was intervening, you'd hate it. You'd feel like your success wasn't real. Because it wouldn't be. The words came out sharper than I intended, and several people glanced our way. I lowered my voice. Every achievement I thought I'd earned myself. Was it you? The Patterson deal? The business school admission? All of it? No. Margaret leaned forward, urgent. Catherine, you built your firm yourself. Your intelligence, your work ethic, your vision. That's all you. I've only helped at the margins. A piece of research here. A warning there. Small interventions when I could see you were about to make a preventable mistake. You had no right. I know. Her voice broke slightly. I know I didn't. But your father gave my daughter dignity in her final weeks, and I've spent 34 years trying to repay that. This is the only way I knew how. I stood up, my chair scraping loud against the floor. You should have told me. You should have let me choose whether I wanted your help. Would you have accepted it? The question hung between us, and we both knew the answer. I would have refused, would have cut her off, insisted on doing everything alone, let pride dictate my choices the way it always had. Margaret stood as well, slower, older. I'm sorry, Catherine. I'm sorry I waited so long. I'm sorry I interfered. But I'm not sorry I tried to honor what your father did for my family. He saved the last precious weeks I had with my daughter. How could I not try to protect his? I left without answering, walked out into the February cold with my heart hammering and my eyes burning. Made it 2 blocks before I had to stop, lean against a building, try to breathe through the feeling that my entire understanding of myself had just been rewritten. My father had saved someone's daughter, and she'd spent 3 decades trying to save his, and I'd built my entire identity on needing no one. I didn't go back to the office. I walked instead, letting the cold bite through my coat, trying to process what Margaret Whitmore had just dismantled with a single conversation. My father had been quiet, steady, the kind of man who came home exhausted every night and still asked about my homework, who saved for years to buy me a used car for college, who'd worn the same winter coat for a decade because he said it still worked fine. He'd died when I was 25, too young to have really known him as an adult, too old to have told him all the things I should have said. And apparently, he'd saved a stranger's dying daughter without ever mentioning it. I found myself at the harbor, watching the water turn dark as the sun set behind the buildings. Pulled out my phone and stared at it for 10 minutes before I finally called the number Margaret had used. She answered immediately. Catherine. Tell me about Emily, I said. A long pause. Then softly, what do you want to know? Everything. If you've been watching over me because of her, I deserve to know who she was. Margaret's voice when she spoke again was thick with memory. She was beautiful, stubborn, so intelligent it sometimes frightened me. She could see through everything, every social nicety, every lie people told themselves. Maybe that's why the world felt too sharp for her, too painful. I listened to the wind off the water, the distant sound of traffic. She started using when she was 15. I didn't notice at first. I was busy with my late husband's business, with charity boards, with all the things that seemed important then. By the time I realized how bad it was, she'd already left home. 16 years old, living God knows where with God knows who. You tried to find her. For a year, private investigators, police contacts, every resource I had. And then your father called me from Mass General. Said a young woman had been brought in, had my name written on a piece of paper in her pocket. When I got there, Emily was sedated, bruised, so thin I barely recognized her. But alive. Your father was sitting beside her bed. He'd stayed for 4 hours, making sure she wasn't alone when she woke up. My eyes were burning. He never told us. He said it wasn't his story to tell, that Emily deserved her privacy, even in her worst moment. Margaret's voice cracked. She had 3 weeks of sobriety in the hospital. 3 weeks where we talked, where I held her hand, where she told me she was sorry and I told her I was sorrier. And then she was released, and 2 days later she was gone. They found her in an abandoned building in Roxbury. Fentanyl. I'm sorry, I whispered. Your father gave me those 3 weeks. Without him, I would have had nothing. Just years of searching and then a phone call from the medical examiner. He gave me the chance to tell my daughter I loved her. How do you repay something like that? I understood then, in a way I hadn't in the coffee shop. This wasn't about control or manipulation, or Margaret trying to claim credit for my success. This was about a mother trying to transform her grief into something that mattered, trying to make sure her daughter's death hadn't been the final word in their story. You created the foundation in her name, I said. The Whitmore Education Foundation. Emily Whitmore. Yes. I couldn't save her, but I could help save you. Your father's daughter deserved every advantage I could quietly provide. I watched the harbor lights shimmer across the water, feeling something shift in my chest. I've spent my whole career believing I did everything alone, that needing help was weakness. You did do it alone, Catherine. I just smoothed a few edges. The work was always yours. But what if I'd known? The question surprised me as much as it probably surprised her. What if you'd told me 10 years ago that you were watching over me because of what my father did? Would that have been so terrible? Silence on the line. Then, would you have let me? I thought about who I'd been at 28, at 30, even at 35. Driven, defensive, so determined to prove I didn't need anyone that I'd pushed away every person who'd tried to get close. My ex-fiancé had said I treated relationships like hostile acquisitions, always looking for the angle, the hidden cost, the moment when affection would turn into expectation. No, I admitted. I would have cut you off, told you I didn't need your help. That's why I stayed hidden, because I knew you needed to build your confidence without feeling indebted. Your father raised you to be independent, and I wasn't going to undermine that. But I also wasn't going to let you struggle when I had the resources to help. The Patterson insurance discrepancy. How did you know about that? I still have connections in the maritime industry. My late husband's family built their fortune in shipping. When I saw you were pursuing Marcus Patterson, I made some calls, asked some questions. The overlap in insurance policies wasn't well hidden. Marcus has been sloppy about record keeping since his son took over operations. I just pointed you toward information that was already there. And the text at the Somerset Club? A pause. I was having lunch 3 tables away. I saw you reach for your attaché case, saw the determination in your posture. You were about to push too hard, too fast. Marcus needs to be courted gently. I learned that 30 years ago when I tried to get him to support one of Emily's recovery programs. He said no to my face, but donated anonymously 3 months later. He doesn't like feeling pressured. I almost laughed. You were there. Right there, and I didn't even see you. I've had a lot of practice being invisible. The wind had picked up and I pulled my coat tighter. What happens now? That's entirely up to you, Margaret said quietly. I can disappear again. Stop the letters, stop watching, let you continue on your own terms, or... She hesitated. Or we could have coffee occasionally. You could tell me about your father, the man he was before I met him. And I could tell you about Emily, who she was before the drugs. We could remember them together. Something in my throat tightened. Just coffee? Just coffee. No more anonymous interventions. No more secrets. Just 2 people who loved people who are gone, trying to keep their memories alive. I stood there in the cold, looking out at the city I'd conquered through what I'd believed was pure determination, and realized that maybe strength wasn't about refusing help. Maybe it was about accepting that love could exist without obligation, that someone could want to protect you without expecting anything in return. My father had helped a stranger's daughter, and that stranger had spent 30 years trying to honor him by helping his. Tuesday mornings, I said finally. There's a coffee shop near my office, 8 a.m. I'll be there. Margaret's voice was warm, relieved. "Catherine, thank you." "No," I said softly. "Thank you for seeing in me what my father must have seen in Emily, someone worth saving." The next morning, I arrived at the office with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The mystery was solved, the protector identified, and I could finally move forward with the Patterson deal on my own terms, informed by Margaret's guidance, but not controlled by it. Jennifer noticed immediately. "You look different." "Different how?" "Less like you're carrying the world on your shoulders. More like you slept." I had slept. For the first time in weeks, I'd slept deeply, without the weight of unknown surveillance pressing against my chest. "I figured some things out. Does this have anything to do with the mysterious notes?" I smiled. "Everything, but it's resolved now." Marcus Patterson's office called that afternoon to reschedule our meeting for Friday. I spent 2 days preparing, but differently this time, not with the desperate precision of someone trying to prove their worth, but with the confidence of someone who understood their value and could afford to be patient. Friday morning, I met Margaret for coffee as we'd agreed. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups already ordered, and something about the gesture, the quiet presumption that I'd show up, that we'd move forward, made my chest feel warm. "Good morning," she said, and her smile was tentative but genuine. "Good morning." I sat down, accepting the coffee. "You remembered my order." "Oat milk latte, 1 sugar. I pay attention." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before I said, "Tell me about my father. When you met him, what he was like." Margaret's expression softened. "Gentle. That's the first word that comes to mind. He spoke to Emily like she mattered, like her life had value even when she couldn't see it herself. He called me every day while she was in the hospital, checking in, asking if I needed anything. Never intrusive, just present." "That sounds like him," I said quietly. "He was always just there, steady. He talked about you constantly, how proud he was, how brilliant you were. He showed me your business school acceptance letter, carried it in his wallet." Something cracked in my chest. "He did?" "Showed it to everyone at the hospital, I think. The nurses, the doctors, anyone who'd listen. 'My daughter's going to Harvard Business School,' he'd say, like it was the most important thing in the world." I had to look away, blinking hard. I'd been so focused on proving myself after he died, on showing the world I could succeed without him, that I'd forgotten how much he'd believed in me when he was alive. "I wish I'd thanked him more," I said. "He knew. Parents always know." We talked for an hour, about my father's terrible jokes, about Emily's love of poetry, about the strange parallel paths our families had taken. And when I finally left from my meeting with Marcus Patterson, I felt lighter somehow, like I'd been carrying a weight I hadn't realized was there. Marcus's office was warm when I arrived, afternoon sun streaming through the windows overlooking the harbor. He stood to greet me with his usual formal courtesy, and we settled into the leather chairs by his desk. "I've been thinking about our previous conversations," he said, "about your approach to wealth management. And you remind me of someone I knew many years ago, someone who understood that protecting wealth isn't just about returns, it's about legacy, about ensuring that what we build outlives us in meaningful ways." I thought of Margaret, of the foundation she'd created in Emily's name, of the quiet way she'd been trying to transform grief into something that mattered. "I agree. Legacy is about more than numbers in an account." "Precisely." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "I've been reading some old work lately. An article I contributed to anonymously in 1994 about maritime asset protection. The principles still hold, I think." My heart skipped. This was the moment. I could reference the article, show him I'd done the research, prove I understood his professional history, the information Margaret had given me, the leverage that would demonstrate I was thorough enough to trust. But something made me hesitate. "Marcus," I said slowly, "I came across that article in my research. It's brilliant, ahead of its time in many ways. But I need to tell you something." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "Someone pointed me toward it. Someone who knew your work, who wanted to help me understand your approach better. And I've realized that accepting help, acknowledging when someone else's guidance has value, that's not weakness. It's wisdom." I saw something shift in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. "Who pointed you to it?" he asked. "A woman named Margaret Whitmore. Her late husband was in maritime shipping. She suggested I read your work because she thought we'd be philosophically aligned." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, "Margaret Whitmore. I haven't heard that name in 30 years. She tried to get me to support a drug rehabilitation program back in the 90s. Very persistent." "Did you?" "Eventually, anonymously. She had a way of making you feel like refusing would be a moral failure." He smiled slightly. "I'm surprised she's still involved in charitable work. She has her reasons." We spent the next 2 hours discussing his portfolio in detail, not with me trying to prove my worth, but with genuine collaboration, two people who understood that wealth was ultimately about what you could protect and pass on. And when Marcus finally leaned back and said, "I think Reed & Associates would be a good fit for my family's holdings," I felt the victory not as conquest, but as partnership. Walking out of his office, I called Margaret from the street. She answered on the first ring. "How did it go?" He said yes. "The deal is moving forward." "Catherine, that's wonderful." I told him about you, about how you'd helped me understand his work. A sharp intake of breath. "You didn't have to. I wanted to. Because I'm done pretending I've done everything alone. And because acknowledging help doesn't diminish achievement. It honors it." Margaret was quiet for so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then softly, "Your father would be so proud of you." "I think he'd be proud of both of us," I said. "For figuring out how to turn loss into something that protects people." That evening, I stood at my penthouse window, looking out at the harbor as the sun set, turning the water gold, and then crimson, and finally dark. And I thought about all the ways people could save each other, dramatically, in moments of crisis, or quietly, over years, through small interventions that shifted the trajectory of a life without anyone noticing. My father had saved Emily in her final weeks. Margaret had saved me in ways I was only beginning to understand. And maybe the real revelation wasn't about who had been protecting me, but about learning to let myself be protected. Learning that accepting love didn't make me weak, and that the strongest foundations were built not alone, but with the support of people who believed in you, even when you couldn't see them. There was just one more thing I needed to understand. One more question that had been quietly haunting me since that conversation in the coffee shop. And I knew I had to ask Margaret directly. I met Margaret at the coffee shop the following Tuesday, as had already become our routine. But this time, I brought something with me. A worn leather wallet I'd found in a box of my father's belongings years ago, and never quite been able to throw away. She noticed it immediately when I set it on the table between us. "What's this?" she asked. "My father's wallet, the one he was carrying when he died." I opened it carefully, the leather cracked and soft with age. I went through it again last night. Really went through it. Inside were the usual things: his driver's license, a few old receipts, a photo of me at my college graduation. But tucked in the billfold, folded small and worn at the creases, was a piece of paper I'd looked at a dozen times over the years without really seeing it. A phone number. And beneath it, in my father's handwriting, Margaret W. Emily's mother. Call if C ever needs help. I watched Margaret's face as she read it. Watched the tears well up in her eyes. He knew, I said quietly. Didn't he? He knew you'd want to help me someday. Margaret touched the paper with trembling fingers. The last time I saw him, about 6 months before he died, I'd finally tracked him down at the post office. I tried again to give him money, to do something to repay him. He refused, like always. But then he said... She stopped, her voice breaking. What did he say? He said, I have a daughter, brilliant girl, going to do important things. If anything ever happens to me, if she ever needs help and is too stubborn to ask for it, you'll know. And maybe then, you can do for her what I did for Emily. Just be there when she needs someone, even if she doesn't know it. The coffee shop blurred around me. He planned this. He knew you'd watch over me. He gave me permission to care about you, to honor him by protecting what he loved most in the world. Margaret wiped her eyes. And he was right. You are too stubborn to ask for help, just like he said. I laughed, the sound caught between tears and something lighter. He knew me so well. He also knew me, knew I'd need a purpose after Emily died, something to transform my grief into. He gave me that. He gave me you. I thought about all the years I'd believed I was alone, building my success through pure determination and refusing to acknowledge that I might need anyone. And all that time, my father had quietly arranged for someone to watch over me, had seen in Margaret the same thing he'd seen in Emily. Someone worth saving, someone deserving of dignity and care. He'd saved Margaret's daughter, and in return, had asked her to save his. Not through grand gestures or obvious intervention, but through the quiet, steady presence that had defined his entire life. Being there, paying attention, offering help in ways that preserve dignity and autonomy. There's something else, Margaret said softly. Something I need you to know. I looked up. The business school tuition wasn't the first time I helped you. When you were applying for your first job out of college, the position at Sterling Wealth Management, you were one of 60 candidates for 2 openings. My heart started beating faster. The hiring partner was a friend of my late husband's. I called him, told him to look at your application carefully, to see past the fact that you didn't come from the right schools or the right family. I didn't ask him to hire you, just to give you a fair chance. To see your brilliance instead of your background. And he called me back after your interview, said you were the most impressive candidate he'd met in a decade, that you'd earned the position entirely on your own merit. But Catherine, without that phone call, he might never have looked closely at your resume. You might never have gotten the interview. I sat back, processing. So even my first job, your talent got you the job. Your work ethic built your career. Your intelligence created Reed and Associates. Margaret leaned forward, urgent. But yes, I opened a door. Just like your father opened a door for Emily when he called that ambulance. What you did after walking through it, that was all you. I thought about the 16-year-old girl my father had found in an alley, barely conscious, carrying her mother's name on a scrap of paper like a prayer. He could have walked past. Could have decided it wasn't his problem, wasn't his responsibility. But he'd stopped. He'd called for help. He'd stayed. And because of that single act of witnessing, of refusing to let someone suffer alone in the dark, my entire life had been quietly protected by a woman who understood that love could be repaid across generations, that saving someone's daughter was a gift that echoed forward through time. After I became a millionaire, I said slowly, I realized who was secretly protecting me. But that's not the whole truth, is it? Margaret waited, her eyes bright. The whole truth is that someone was protecting me long before I became a millionaire. Before I built my firm, before I went to business school, maybe even before my father died. He saw what I'd need, someone to believe in me when I was too proud to believe I needed anyone. And he found that person in you. Yes, Margaret whispered. And you've been there ever since. Not controlling my life, not taking credit for my success, but just watching. Making sure I didn't fall through the cracks the way Emily did. Making sure I knew, even if I didn't consciously realize it, that I wasn't alone. Margaret reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was soft, her grip firm. Your father saved my daughter's dignity. The least I could do was protect his daughter's future. And Catherine, it's been an honor, watching you build something remarkable, watching you become exactly who he believed you'd become. It's been the greatest privilege of my life. I held her hand and let myself cry, finally understanding what my father had known all along. That strength wasn't about refusing help, but about accepting it with grace. That legacy wasn't just what you built, but who you allowed to build it with you. That love could be quiet and anonymous and still change everything. 3 months later, I stood in the same penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor. But this time, I wasn't alone. Margaret stood beside me, looking out at the water where the spring sun turned everything gold. The Patterson merger finalized today, I said. $43 million, the largest deal Reed & Associates has ever closed. Congratulations. She smiled at me. You earned it. We earned it, I corrected. Your guidance, my execution, partnership. On my desk behind us sat 2 photographs in matching silver frames. One of my father in his postal uniform, grinning at the camera with the kind of unself-conscious joy I'd almost forgotten he possessed. The other of Emily at 16, before the drugs, before the darkness. A girl with bright eyes and a smile that suggested she could see through everything. 2 people who'd saved each other in the time they had. 2 people whose love had rippled forward, protecting their daughters in ways neither of them could have fully anticipated. I'd renamed my firm's charitable foundation that week. The Reed Whitmore Education Initiative, funding business school scholarships for students from working-class backgrounds. Our first recipient was a 22-year-old woman from Roxbury, whose father was a bus driver and whose potential was limitless. My father used to say that nothing worth having comes without a fight, I said, watching the boats move across the harbor. But I think he was wrong. Some things, the most important things, come from people fighting for you, even when you don't know they're in the ring. Margaret's eyes glistened. He'd love that you're rewriting his wisdom. He'd love that I finally understand it. We stood together in comfortable silence, 2 women connected by grief and grace, by the men and women who'd loved us enough to save each other. And I thought about all the anonymous hands that guide us through life. The strangers who call ambulances, the mentors who make phone calls, the protectors who smooth our paths without expecting recognition. My father had been one of those hands for Emily. Margaret had been one for me. And now, through the foundation, we'd be those hands for someone else. After I became a millionaire, I realized who was secretly protecting me. But the deeper truth, the one that changed everything, was understanding why. Not because I'd earned it, or deserved it, or even needed it in ways I could articulate. But because my father had taught Margaret that love was a verb that acted without expectation of return. That saving someone's daughter, even a stranger's daughter, was simply what you did when you had the power to help and the heart to care. And she'd spent 30 years proving that some debts aren't meant to be repaid. They're meant to be passed forward, transforming grief into protection, loss into legacy, and silence into the quiet, steady presence that says, I see you. You matter. You're not alone. Margaret squeezed my hand gently. Coffee next Tuesday? Every Tuesday, I promised. For as long as you'll have me. She smiled through her tears. That's what your father said to me once. For as long as you need me, I'll be here. And he was. Even after he was gone, he was still here. In you. In what he'd asked me to do. In the love that doesn't end just because someone dies. I looked at the photographs on my desk, at the city spreading out below us, at the woman who'd been my secret guardian for decades, and was now simply my friend. And I understood, finally, what it meant to be protected. Not controlled, not diminished, but held in someone's heart with enough care that they'd spend years making sure you had every chance to become who you were meant to be. The harbor was turning gold in the afternoon light, beautiful and ordinary and infinite, just like love, when you finally let yourself see it. The end. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to know. What rating would you give it from 0 to 10? And thank you for listening to this journey of legacy, protection, and the quiet ways we save each other.